Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. I'm going to say a name that is almost guaranteed to make you smile. Yogi, right? Well, not much smiling these days without baseball, but there is plenty of joy in a new book about Lorenzo Pietro Berra. Yogi, A Life Behind the Mask. Yogi Berra was the greatest winner in baseball history. Author John Pessah argues that his grace and humility in the face of relentless scorn made him an even greater man. Next. Welcome, John Pessah. It's great to see you. I think it's karma that we're together on this day. This would have been Yogi's 95th birthday. So I guess I should say thank you to Yogi for making this interview necessary.
Tony, it's a pleasure to be here. And if you can't imitate him, don't copy him.
Okay, folks, here we go. Bada bing. Those are the Yogi-isms. We'll get those out of the way right away. The things for which Yogi will be forever celebrated and probably best known for many people. Anyway, before we get to Yogi Behind the Mask, the title of the book, let me point out all the great baseball stuff is in there, your book. He's a Hall of Fame player, 15-time All-Star. It's all in there, folks. But we're going to talk a lot today about Yogi Behind the Mask. This is a guy whose legend grew, John. One of the few people, superstar athletes, for whom his legend grew after his legendary playing days.
Yeah, very true. And I think for people under 60, they think of the Yogi who's in the commercial, who does the funny sayings, and it's overshadowed. His persona has overshadowed a far more complicated and a far more accomplished person.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who did it all. I mean, he was in the midst of probably every great baseball play for 19 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I was struck by a quote from the great late baseball commissioner Bart Giamatti, who said, talking to Yogi Berra about baseball is like talking to Homer about the gods.
Right. I mean, Yogi was walking history. I mean, he's on his rookie year. He's on the field with Babe Ruth. He's lockering next to Joe DiMaggio. He's there for Allie Reynolds' 2 no-hitters, one of which he dropped the second to last play and then caught it finally on the last play. He's there for Larson. He's even on his day when he finally comes back to the Yankees in 1999. David Cone pitches a perfect game. That's the kind of person, and that's the kind of life Yogi led. Every step of the way, it was history.
And yet, as we just said, it's, the later life, his fame in later life is what most people remember who perhaps are not ardent baseball fans. I mean, how can you not think about those commercials that he made?
Right. I mean, he was one of the first to do those, the commercials. I mean, Yogi's career tracks with the rise of television. And so Yogi starts out doing commercials for Camel and just, real bare bones commercials, to a great piece with George Lois where he's talking to a talking cat, which was revolutionary at the time, to Miller Lite, to Yao Ming. And conducting the New York Philharmonic, where he turns around and say, who is that guy Philharmonic anyway? And, right to the Aflac Duck.
How do you upstage the Aflac Duck? But Yogi did it in this spot. Let's take a look.
Not too close. What do you think? I got that insurance?
What insurance is that, Yogi?
Aflac. The one you really need to have. If you don't have it, that's why you need it.
Need what?
Aflac. Well, if you get hurt and miss work, it won't hurt to miss work. And they give you cash, which is just as good as money.
Aflac. Ask about it at work.
Man, he's good. He's good.
He was very good. And the two gentlemen who designed that commercial and ran it for 10 years said by far the most popular and most reaction they ever got from any commercial that he did. So he upstaged the Aflac Duck, and not many people can do that.
Let's get to Yogi behind the mask a bit, John, because I was struck by several of the things in your book in regard to that. One, the sensitivity and the shyness of this guy. He was very humble, very shy. You don't think of Yogi off screen that way, or off the diamond that way.
Right. I mean, there really are two Yogis. And I mean, on the baseball field, well known for talking to the umpires all game long, talking to the batters all game long, very take charge as a catcher, and, you know, being interviewed occasionally, you know, uttering a very funny line. Off the field, quiet as can be, to the point of almost being shy, a very sensitive man. And that comes into play because this is someone who faced abuse for his heritage and abuse for his looks, his perceived lack of smarts. And he kept that all inside to people. He let it roll off his back, but it was something that he harbored for his whole life.
Yeah, you were surprised, you said, in the book, and I was surprised at the level of the abuse and how much he took for how long. I mean, all of the slurs against Italian American, you know, he was called a wop and a dago and worse than that. And of course he was mocked for his looks, for his appearance.
Yeah.
Talk more about that and how Yogi handled it.
Well, the first part, I mean, his first manager in 1943, a guy by the name of Shecky Kane, Norfolk, Virginia, sees that Yogi is getting unbelievable abuse for his heritage, for his looks. And of course, in the minor leagues, the stands are on top of you, so he could hear every word. And he would return to the bat rack, slam his bat down, turn beet red. And he came over to him and he said, "Look, you're really good. You're going to get a lot of abuse about your looks, but especially you, because you're Italian." And that blew me away. I understood there was discrimination against all immigrant groups, but the extent of the discrimination against Italians really, really surprised me. And then the whole thing about his looks, I mean, called the ugliest man in baseball. They would throw bananas out when he came to bat.
Yeah, he was compared and by fans that were screaming at him, and other players, opposing players. They call him an ape. Talk about, you know, what tree do you live in?
Right. I mean, the one that really hit me the hardest and there was that went all the way through to his last managing days, where his wife Carmen of 65 years did not want him to manage because she didn't want him to go through the same sort of abuse about his perceived lack of smarts. And you know, it's something that lasted for most of his life. It was only the last 20 years of his life, and that's between 70 and 90, that he really didn't face that on a regular basis. I think you know just how deeply it bothered him when in 1961, an autobiography comes out of Yogi Berra, ghosted by a good sports writer named Ed Fitzgerald. And the very first page talks about the ugly Yogi, the person who was too dumb to understand pressure, and that's why he hit a home run. That's the very first paragraph. And he said, "I don't know who that Yogi is." And that's the very first paragraph of his autobiography. And he was 35 at the time. So you know that it really, deep down, really bothered him.
You told me something I found fascinating, and it's partly conjecture, but it seems soundly based, that you think maybe this stuff that Yogi had to, you know, bury inside of him was in some way at least responsible for his decision to manage eventually, to be a manager.
Oh, absolutely. When there were first rumors that Yogi was going to manage, which happened the last 2 years of his playing career, all the stories came back out again about Yogi's too dumb to manage. You know, Yogi's not smart enough. And I think that, you know, from there to when he managed the Mets, and by the way, he was the first manager to take a team to the World Series in the American League and the National League. So for someone who wasn't smart enough, the guy ends up being an incredible winner as a manager. And then in 1984 4 and 5 when he never should have managed for George Steinbrenner, because that was when Steinbrenner was at his utmost worst. He took the job, and I think he deeply wanted to prove all the critics wrong, that he was smart enough and a very smart man.
Well, it was tragic, what happened with him, and well, tragic is probably the wrong word. I mean, Steinbrenner was a in many ways a terrible man, and Yogi called him a liar and somebody who couldn't be trusted. He fires Yogi after saying, after telling him that you're not going to be fired, but he doesn't do it himself. He had somebody else do it for him.
Right. And that's where Yogi pretty much drew the line. It was like he understood, he was pretty sure he was going to get fired. And George was firing 2 and 3 managers a year then. But it was the way that he was fired. Ron Guidry told me a story that Yogi said, and you talk about tragic, that the years that he spent away from the Yankees, when he looked in the mirror, he saw pinstripes. And the years that he was away from the Yankees because of Steinbrenner were the worst years of his life. So I think he was, really, greatly relieved and gratified to be, to finally return to where he belonged.
Well, it was 14 years, the boycott,
yeah.
and essentially Yogi's take on it when he finally made up his mind that he just was not going to be back in Yankee Stadium. He was not going to be in George Steinbrenner's presence. He talked about disrespect.
He humiliated him, and again, not firing somebody face to face after you said the guy has the whole season to manage is where he drew the line. And when they got back together in January of 1999, the person that was most of the two that was far more reluctant to say yes was Yogi. And in fact, when his friends came to him and said, "Okay, George has agreed to come to your museum and to apologize," Yogi said, "Just a stunt. I'm not doing it," and just cursed the blue streak. And goes upstairs. His kids have a business upstairs, a memorabilia business around their father. And they said, "Listen, your grandkids have never seen you where your fame originated. Don't you want them to see it?" And and all of us who are now grandparents can really relate to that. And I think that ended up being the winning argument, and he agreed to do it.
I find it interesting. I mean, more than interesting. Yogi could be stubborn, and he stuck to that boycott. Joe Torre asked him, "Come to Yankee Stadium and present me with my first World Series ring." Yogi said no. Right. Mattingly, it was going to have his. They retired his number,
and they were very close.
And and Don said, "Please, Yogi, come for the set." No.
Nope. And they had a 50-year ceremony for Phil Rizzuto, Yogi's best friend. And he said, "Not going to be there." And Rizzuto told reporters, "I understand where that's coming from." He knew his friend very, very well, and he knew how hurt he was over what had happened. So yes, he had dug in his heels, but the minute that George apologized, it was over. And the two men end up becoming very close friends, calling each other on their birthdays. Yogi would go and sit in George's box, 2 or 3 times every homestand. They talked a lot. They became friends. I mean, Yogi could hold a grudge, and when the grudge was over, it was over.
Let's talk a little about his early life in St. Louis, on the Hill, in that very close-knit family, as Italian-American immigrant families were, many other families too. He was called Lodi at home.
Right. Well, his mom never learned how to speak English, only spoke Italian. Italian was the primary language spoken on the Hill, the Italian quarter of St. Louis. And his name is Lawrence Peter Berra, and the closest his mother could get to Lawrence was Lodi. So he was Lodi. He was Lodi until after Branch Rickey decides not to sign him with the Cardinals, one of the great mistakes in the history of baseball and really changed the history of baseball. He plays American Legion ball, and one of his teammates sees Yogi's in a newsreel in India, says that's the way Yogi sits when he's coming to bat, and nicknamed him Yogi. And how many people get the gift of having a first name recognition like that? I mean, Larry Berra, okay, we'd remember him. He's a great player. Yogi Berra, everyone knows the name Yogi.
Well, you don't even have to use the last name.
Right.
Say Yogi, and everybody knows who you're talking about.
Yeah, that's it. And
on several continents.
Exactly. I'll tell you, one of the places he's really, really popular is Japan. They love baseball in Japan, and he visited two or three times, once after his career, and each time drew the biggest crowds, the most cheers of any of the Yankees. And we're talking about the Yankees of the Mantle Maris era and the Yankees of the Jeter and Torre era, and the person who was embraced the most by the Japanese fans was Yogi Berra. And yes, his fame was worldwide. Everybody knew who Yogi was.
Family meant everything to him, and I'm told that he, all his life, he carried in his wallet a picture of his mother and father.
Right. He was very close with his mother. In fact, not many people know this, and I certainly didn't until I did the research. 1956. Everyone remembers the 1956 World Series for the perfect game.
Mm-hmm.
And then Yogi goes on to hit 2 home runs off of Don Newcomb in the 7th game to win it. 2 days before that series was played, he called home and told his father, "I'm coming home." And the reason why he was coming home was his mother was suffering from diabetes, which in those days was a far more unmanageable disease. And as she had already lost her sight, and she was going in to have her leg amputated. This is 1956. This is a very dangerous operation. And he called up 2 days before the World Series and said, "Pop, I'm coming home. I got to be there for this." And his father said, "No." And he goes, "No, Dad, I got to be there for this." He said, "Your mother wants you to play baseball. Play baseball. We're all going to be here come after that," which is what he ended up doing. So he almost missed the 1956 World Series.
It's 10 runs batted in for Yogi, an all-time World Series record.
Unlike most celebrities, Yogi did not like being in the spotlight. I mean, he knew he was a star. He knew he was the most important player on the team that won 5 straight World Series. But in talking to himself, self-promoting, he hated it. Yogi was a superstar who didn't want any of the accolades. I mean, he wanted to be paid, that's for sure, but he didn't want the attention that went along with it. And that's very, as you know, that's very unusual among celebrities.
Yeah, wish we had more like that.
Exactly.
Which is not going to happen in this day of Facebook and Twitter and all
Absolutely.
the rest. It took his brothers to unite in support of Yogi's desire to be a baseball player, because in the Yogi household, as you point out in the book, getting a job was very important to contribute to the family, and Dad did not think highly at all of a baseball career and kept pushing Yogi, "You got to find a job, you got to find a job." Just talk a little bit about this. Is the family he came from. These two brothers say, "Hey."
He's the youngest of 4 brothers. The older one, Tony, is 8 years older than Yogi was. And to his dying day, Yogi insisted that Tony was the best player in the family. Tony had offers to play Major League Baseball. And his father said, "No, you're going to work." And this is during the Depression, so he became a baker. Mike is a good baseball player. He has offers to play. He works in a women's shoe factory. John is a good player, has offers to play. He ends up being a waiter. And now it's Yogi's turn, and the boys just finally prevail on their father, saying, "Look, we'll work extra. We'll get some extra shifts. We'll bring in the money that Yogi doesn't. Let the kid try to play baseball. We think he can make it." And his father only knew soccer, as most immigrant fathers did. And, his whole thing was games are for children, work are for men. And if you're out of school and you're a man, you're working.
I think Yogi, I wanted to talk about his bravery because he was in the Navy in World War II, and he was at D-Day. In fact, he was if I'm not mistaken, he was the only Major League player at D-Day.
Somebody told me there was one other, and I think the guy spent, like a couple of weeks in major leagues. Yogi was the only really active Major League Baseball player at D-Day. And the backstory to that is that he was in basic training in Norfolk, Virginia, and volunteered for a secret mission. They so secret you weren't allowed to tell your parents where you were going or what it was about or anybody. You
gotta underline that. He volunteered.
He volunteered.
For a secret mission.
Right. They asked, we have a secret mission involving a big invasion, and Yogi's hand, before the guy finished, instantly shot up. He volunteers for the mission. The mission is to man a 6-person, 36-foot-long boat, wooden hull, slap a metal on the top, 2 rocket launchers in the back, 3 machine guns in the front. And their job, they were literally the leading edge of the invasion in Normandy. They were the first boat. They get within 300 yards of the shore. Their job was to lob rockets into the machine gun nest to give the soldiers on the transport a chance to make it on the beach. He gets injured, gets hit in the hand with a bullet. Thankfully for him and for us as baseball fans, didn't affect his baseball career. Doesn't put in for the Purple Heart until he gets home because he didn't want to worry his mother.
Right. He wins the that stopped me. In the book, I'm just, yeah, his first thought is not, I won the Purple Heart. It's, gee, if I put in for it now, my family back at home is going to hear about it. They'll worry about me. No.
Exactly. So he waited. And that's just the kind of guy he was. And, served, as I said, 13 months, comes back to the States, and they send him to New London sub base. And the funny thing is, Yogi said, me in a sub. And what he didn't know was that his wish was granted. He worked in the sports and recreation department. And the manager of the baseball team there was a major leaguer named Jimmy Gleason, who had been in the Navy for 4 years, and didn't believe that Yogi was a baseball player. Took one look at him and said, "You're a wrestler." Gave him a quiz to see if he was a baseball player, still didn't believe him. And then the day he walked on the baseball field in April and got into the batting cage, Gleason's whole mindset changed and said, this is the best player I've ever seen. And the kicker to that story is when Yogi becomes manager in 1964, and he's got one coaching opening, the first phone call he makes after the press conference is to Jim Gleason, who had spent his entire career managing and coaching in the minor leagues, and said, I want you to coach for first base for the New York Yankees.
Good friend of mine, and yours too, Marty Appel, who used to be the director of communications for the Yankees during the Steinbrenner years. Marty Appel said, Yogi is the greatest generation.
And in many ways, he embodies the American dream. He comes from a poor immigrant family, and he becomes part of the first upper middle class in all of America, moving out to the suburbs, eventually settling in Montclair, New Jersey, a beautiful little town. And there's just so much about his life. When President Obama looked at the list for the Medal of Freedom winners, and he came across Yogi's, and he stopped. And his staff wondered, why are you stopping? And he said, I can't believe his name is here. Why hasn't this man gotten this medal a long, long time ago? And so it was people on every level that looked at Yogi like this, not just, journalists or fans.
We've got to talk a bit about Carmen, who was the third girl, only the third girl Yogi ever dated, but he knew, bang, I'm going to marry this woman. And he did. And she was, I don't know, as strong and an equal partner in everything he did. 65
years of being, as you say, an equal partner. They formed a formidable business team, which the Yankees found out when Yogi held out twice, coinciding with him getting married. And they set their salary scale. She was also held up by the general manager, George Weiss of the Yankees, as the perfect Yankee wife. The Yankees had an image that they worked very hard to cultivate. They had to wear a suit, they had to tip properly, they had to do everything right in a restaurant. And George Weiss held up Carmen as to all the other wives, going, if you want to know what a Yankee wife is, this is a Yankee wife. And when the two of them, this is a cute story. Yogi loved going to the Hall of Fame. And so every year they made the trek up to Cooperstown, and everybody, I was told everybody looked at Carmen and Yogi as the king and queen of the prom, and that they were the most popular people there. And it was almost like Yogi always got there early. Yogi got everywhere early. If you were supposed to meet Yogi at 7:00 and you got there at 6:55, you were late.
There was a story that when Steinbrenner came to the museum to apologize, he comes to the door and Yogi opens the door and points to his watch and says, "You're late."
You're late. And when they agreed to meet at the museum, which again was built by the citizens of Montclair to honor Yogi's both as a player and as a person, it was supposed to be 5:00. Well, we're talking North Jersey. He gets at the museum at 10 after 5, And as George is walking up, not in his usual power suit of the blue blazer and the gray slacks over the white turtleneck, he's wearing a very mellow brown, very not power suit. He's walking up and he's nervous. And Yogi is standing there. He's looking at his watch and he's just tapping it. And he says to George, he goes, "You're late." And George goes, "Come on, Yogi, I came all the way from Florida." And they both laughed. Ends up walking into a private office with Carmen, who had a bottle of champagne with her. And he put his hands on Yogi's shoulders and said, "The worst mistake I ever made was firing you the way I fired you." And Yogi answered by saying, "Yeah, I've made some mistakes too." And that was it. And it was over.
Yeah. Well, there are two perfect ways to learn more, everything there is to know about Yogi. One is to go to that museum in Montclair, which is a wonderful place.
It really is.
And of course, to read this book. And a delight to read. Thank
you.
10 World Series rings? Come on. I mean, the guy was larger than life on the field and later off the field.
As full life as anybody I've ever read about.
John, it's been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.